Today, we're going to take a look at another political shift. This time, it's going to be in the U.S. Senate between 2012 and 24. I already did this between 18 and 24. This is going to go back another 6 years with the same Senate seats also during a presidential election. If you want to skip ahead to the map, there's going to be a chapter down below in the description. But first, let's get a little bit of background information. So here's 2012. In that election, Democrats finished with 53 seats, Republicans 45. Dems picked up 2 of them. We also can't forget about the 2 independents that caucus with the Dems on the bottom. In total, with the national popular vote just in the Senate, Dems got 53.4, Republicans 41.8. So that was coming off a solid year for the Dems. It was the re-election of Obama, and they did pretty well here in the Senate. Now, 12 years later, under the second election of Trump, Republicans finished with 53 seats. The Dems got 45, and it's also going to be the same 2 independents that caucus with the Dems. So that means the GOP here gained 4 seats. Now, in the national popular vote, the Democrats still won it. Republicans got 47.7. Dems got 49.1. So a slight advantage there overall. That's going to take us into the spreadsheet. The left column are the states. Then we've got the winner in 2024, then their incumbency status. Then we've got the 2012 popular vote percentage in each state for the Democrats. Then it's going to be the same for the Republicans. Then we've got the 24 popular vote in each state for the Dems, then for the GOP. Then we've got the change in percentage between those 2 elections for the Democrats, followed by the Republicans. Finally, we've got the net change between the 2 parties between the 2 elections. And there's also shading in this column. The darkest colors are going to be 10 or more points. The lightest colors are going to be under 5 points. So a couple real quick things. Number 1, I took all the data from Wikipedia. Occasionally there's a small discrepancy, and some of this data can be skewed by third-party candidates. Not a lot I could do about that. I just take the vote for the Democrat and the Republican in each state. The only exception are going to be the 2 independents in Maine and Vermont. Since they caucus with the Democrats, I decided to use their number in place of that. It's not perfect, but it was either that or nothing. Now let's go through the first state of Arizona. The winner here in 24 was Ruben Gallego. That was an open seat, so he was not an incumbent. But back in 2012, Republicans actually won that seat. It was Jeff Flake who got 49.2. But in 24, Gallego's popular vote was 50.1. He defeated Kerry Lake, who got 47.7. That means the Dems have gained 3.9%. The Republicans went down 1.5%. That's an overall net shift of 5.4% away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. So that's how this works. Now we can quickly go through most of the rest of these states. In California, that state shifted 7.2 toward the Republicans. In Connecticut, it was the exact same amount, but in the exact opposite direction, 7.2 toward the Dems. Delaware had a massive red shift of 20.5, but not to be outdone, Florida had an even bigger red shift, even though Bill Nelson won it by double digits back in 12. Rick Scott in 24 also won it by double digits. That means we're looking at a swing here of a massive 25.8%. Hawaii went bluer by 7.5. Indiana was also won by Democrat Joe Donnelly in 2012. Since then, it shifted a huge 25.5 toward the Republicans. In Maine, again, Angus King here is technically an independent. He did run against both Democrats and Republicans in both of these years, so there's an asterisk there, so you might not want to use the data at all. But if you do, this is going to compare King to the Republican candidate in that race. It's not going to factor in the actual Democrat. If you go by that, the state moved toward the right by 4.6. In Maryland, that state got a lot redder by 17.9. A lot of that was due to Larry Hogan. Massachusetts had the biggest blue shift out of all the states. It's coming off a solid year for the Republicans in that state back in 12. Scott Brown was defeated, but it was not by a landslide. Since then, it's moved 12.3 toward the left. Michigan, a massive shift toward the right of 20.5. In Minnesota, similarly massive at an even 19. In Mississippi, a little less massive at 10.1. But in Missouri, a lot more massive at 29.5. That was another seat that Democrats won comfortably back in 2012. Montana, 11% redder. In Nebraska, in 24, that was an independent candidate, Dan Osborne, and technically not a Democrat, because that's the only opposition to Deb Fischer. We're going to use that instead. And with that, it got bluer by 6.9. Nevada, just a little bit bluer by 2.9. And that state was won by Dean Heller, the Republican, back in 12. New Jersey, right under 10 points, 9.9 toward the GOP. In New Mexico, it took a step toward the left by 4.5. In New York, it was a very significant red shift of 27.6. North Dakota decided to do even more than that at 33.8. It's another state that was won by a Democrat back in 12. Now we've got more red shifts in Ohio, 9.6, Pennsylvania, 9.3, and Rhode Island, 9.8. Tennessee, that's a red state, but they managed to move 4.9% toward the left. Texas also got bluer by 7.4. Utah also in that direction by 4.5. Vermont, again, we've got Bernie Sanders, the independent. We're going to use his data as a Democrat, and if we do, it shifted 15% toward the right. Virginia, a little bit of movement there, 3.1 toward the Dems. In Washington, that state got redder by a mild 2.4. West Virginia had by far the biggest shift out of all the states. Back in 12, that was won in a landslide by Joe Manchin. But in 24, it was an even bigger landslide for Jim Justice. If you add all that up, we're looking at an astonishing 65.1 toward the Republicans. In Wisconsin, it also got redder, but by a much less significant 4.7. And in Wyoming, that state managed to get just a little bit bluer by an even 3. Then we've got the national shift here. It's a big 10.2 toward the Republicans. And remember, that's not going to factor in any of that independent vote. So those are all the states and all the shifts. Now, some of you might want to see how this data looks if it were on a map. Well, here it is. We've got those same shifts. 3 levels, 10 or more are the darkest colors, and under 5 points are the lightest colors. So are there any takeaways from these shifts? Well, yeah, I think there's a few. First of all, going back to 2012 was kind of a different era politically. This is going from pre-Trump to post-Trump. So you have some traditionally blue states getting a lot redder, like Rhode Island or Maryland. But you also have some red states getting bluer, like Wyoming and Tennessee. But even with that said, Democrats did have a lot of success back in 12. But since then, Republicans have all easily flipped those seats in red states. Other states have gotten competitive, like Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and other states like California, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. They did have shifts toward the right, but there's really no chance those seats are actually getting competitive anytime soon. The Midwest and the Rust Belt, that's where Republicans had their most consequential gains. We also don't want to totally forget about Florida. That state has moved a lot toward the right. Dems have some positive indicators in Nebraska, Texas, and into the Southwest. And they already have both seats in Nevada and Arizona. But outside of that, it looks like those states are just too red for the Dems to be competitive anytime soon. Some of these shifts, of course, depend on the candidates in either of these 2 years. There were some stronger and weaker candidates in some of these different states. And there's not a perfect formula to compare these types of Senate elections, but they're the same states during presidential years. A lot of them are actually the same candidates. Trump and Obama could have also had an effect on some of these races down ballot. So this will tell you something, but of course, it's not going to be close to everything. But if you were interested, these are the shifts in the U.S. Senate between 2012 and 24. So let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Which jump out the most to you? And why do you think these states moved the way that they did? Was it because of the incumbents? Was it because of the specific issues? Maybe the demographics? Or maybe the candidates at the top of the ticket for president were also a big factor? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.